Okay, so I was talking about scoring one of these boards in my last video, and I thought I'd just do a quick trial. I read somewhere about some guy saying that it was as easy as just using a sharp knife and making a cut in it and then snapping it. So that's actually what I'm going to try. I'm just going to use a ruler and then an X-Acto knife I got laying around here. And just super curious if it really is that easy. I'm not trying to be too precise here. Yeah, my ruler's already moved. That actually feels pretty deep now. I'm just going to bend it. Now see, this is really thin stuff. Let me show you what normal looks like. If I can get it to focus very well on that. Zoom out maybe. And you can see the difference there. Okay, so it looks like this will just snap off pretty cleanly, but oh, it doesn't feel like it's going to. Not even at all. Wow. That is some tough stuff. See what I'm doing there? Well, I don't trust that to work at all. Yeah, now the board's a little bit bent for me wrenching on it like that. I'm afraid I'm going to start separating traces or something. So, apparently it's not that easy. I might need to rethink this a little bit. The other thing I was talking about doing was just cutting it with scissors. And I think I'll try that next just because the scoring didn't seem to work out too well. That was pretty easy, actually. I'm curious if the scoring had much to do with it though, so let's try this. Oh, easy as pie. Now I'll have to look and see what thickness those are, and I'll have to get back with you, but you know, I want to say it was 0.8 mil. That sounds about right. I could be wrong though. Well, there's one that's quickly been cut out from the board with scissors. As you can see, it is super straight. Not. One thing I didn't mention in the videos was the holes for connecting all the pins up on the edge of the board. I'll zoom in a little bit more, I guess. Those are actually custom holes that I had to make an eagle, and what I did was I had them so that they're exactly 0.05 inches apart, so that it will easily fit a ribbon cable like that without having to stretch them apart. All I have to do is shear off the insulation and then maybe tin them, maybe not. These holes are actually quite large, so I think I could tin them ahead of time, you know, and be able to just walk the tinned leads into their holes, and then I can just connect up ribbon cable to those really easy. One thing that I do hate about my little boards and this connector is you drill a hole, you push it through, and of course I've super glued it in, but once I get in there to solder it in, it's going to be quite permanent. This might be a good place to have a set of those header pins, which means I would have to change all of those holes to 0.1 spacing, which would make it exactly twice as wide. It'd be crazy, but then I could at least pull this cable from the board. However, the easier way will probably just be put the header pins over here instead of soldering directly to the board, if there's room in there. With all this ribbing down in here, I'm not sure exactly how much. Maybe get the 90-degree ones. I mean, we've already got the PPU sticking up pretty far in there, so it might work. So this will be my first attempt at soldering this board down in here. And of course the NES itself, the motherboard has to be out of the way. Yeah, access is not the greatest. But I think I can get it done. A lot cooler if I knew exactly which pins I needed to solder and didn't need to solder. Oh, you know what? I've already forgotten to put the audio leads on there. I'm going to do that before I solder it down. Okay, so I just added the 6-inch lead for audio that I can easily access later. And I changed the camera angle a little bit so that you can see what I'm doing a little better here. Give you an idea of what kind of access I got here. It's definitely not super easy. I can imagine doing this with soldering iron that had a really big tip on it, and of course a big handle would also get in the way. So that's that. Let's see if I can zoom in some more here. And there you go. Not the easiest thing in the world to do. So, now I guess we can put the rest of the console together. Just kind of a quick shot of the inside before I really start putting it together a whole lot more. It is stereo modded, and expansion audio has been fed back into it. Looking back, I might put the palette switch on this side, that way the wires aren't crossing each other. But it's not that big of a deal, really. I just thought maybe the palette switch would be easier to get to if it was over on this end of the console. Let's keep going. Okay, one of the big things that one or two people were worried about was the heatsink on the front loader NES not being enough to keep the 1.5 amp 7805 cool, and I'm reading about 120 degrees. I think that is well within reason. It's a little bit hard to get a good reading on the aluminum, so I'll try to point right onto the 7805, and yeah, okay, there I got 125. So I think the smaller heatsink is actually doing, I mean, I can put my fingers on it. It's hot, but it's not scalding me. You know, and I'm running the power pack, so I'm drawing even more current than you know, like a normal cart would pull. You know, it's got the nesrgb underneath, But yeah, I believe this is more than adequate for what we're doing. Another thing, the Sega Genesis SCART cord that I'm using is actually a raw sync cable, and what it's doing is it's sending composite sync from the nesrgb through, and then on the actual SCART head it's got composite sync feeding the composite video pin. So I'm still using composite video on PVM, I'm just sending it sync, and it works fine. So there you go. It looks like the Sega Genesis Model 2 connector is a go. Okay, here's a last look at the Nintendo, completely done. And one thing to note, that the palette switch does stick out quite a bit off the back here. So if you're wondering about what kind of palette switch to use, just note that the toggle does stick out. I don't know, probably about ½ inch or so right there. The rest of it's pretty flush. I did actually add the stereo switch mod to this one. But it's finished, ready to go on to an owner. There was one last bit of news that I forgot to add to the last video regarding nesrgb updates. There is a new switchless palette mod. If anybody's reading the Shmups thread, it was posted there. Couldn't tell you who it is or where he's from or nothing like that. He posted the code and pretty much how to do it and all that stuff. It uses the reset button though, and I watched the video and it looked like it was okay, I guess. I don't know. Not sure on cost or when I'll have it available or anything like that, or even if anybody even wants it. But it could be an alternative, especially when we're talking about the top loader or the AV Famicom, where there's not a lot of real estate on the back of the console to mount the toggle switch or whatever switch. I do have a couple that are just going to use that little switch that I showed you with the stereo mod, just a 2-position switch, and we can use that one just to switch between 2 palettes instead of all 3, or like we got the 4-position switches to turn the nesrgb off altogether, which I haven't had anybody want that yet. But like the AV Famicom is my big concern. I've done one, I showed it, and I had to drill a hole in the top shell to mount the palette switch and also the stereo switch, because there's not room on the multi-out panel for it. So if we do the switchless palette switch mod, then we can leave the top shell unmolested, and that's not a bad thing. So I'll keep you updated on that when I know more about cost or availability or anything like that. It might even be a while before you can even prototype it. So for now, even if you do want it, what we could do is simply wire the nesrgb board for a single palette, or we could loosely place one of those small switches somewhere, or the toggle switch somewhere where it won't matter, but you can still have access to it. And then down the road, if you want to switch it to the switchless mod, change it to the switchless mod, then we can do that and leave the shell, without holes. So I guess that's about all I got for today. Like I said, there's probably not going to be a lot of updates from now on, because I still have a ton of work to do, and most of the stuff has been figured out now. I did hear back from a few people about retro console accessories, and one guy said that, I guess it's a girl that runs it, she's having trouble with her Chinese supplier on something, I don't know what for, but if it doesn't get figured out soon, she's going to go with a different supplier. So hopefully they'll start having those back in stock more often. And that's it. Until I hear, like, maybe from the 3D printing guys about their multi-out panel, I don't think there'll be many videos on the nesrgb for a while. But there you go.